What's up, everybody? Welcome to the MarkZDrumcast on a Wednesday in March. Our temperatures have once again dropped to the unacceptable level after a few days of a tease in the 60s. The groundhog saw his shadow and an early spring, but I think we're on the right track. I think we're going to get back up there relatively soon. I'm hearing spring is right around the corner. Has not yet sprung, but we are again moving in that direction. I can't see anything that I need to see because of certain elements in my studio that are the direct result of writing sessions here, but that's okay. We're going to talk today about the importance of counting out loud. That's right, counting out loud. The oral count, as it's called. That might be a better way to put it for some people. I don't know. But people do not love to count out loud. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the importance of counting out loud. I also want to take some time to talk about the importance of book learning when it comes to drums. And these two things really go hand in hand because books can be a very valuable tool with a teacher, but also without a teacher. If you can work through a book on your own, it's not ideal, but if you don't have a teacher and you understand how to work through a book that you have, maybe from a previous teacher when you used to take lessons or whatever, it's a great, because it's a really good guideline. We're not just kind of flailing about, not knowing what to work on or what to practice. If you choose a book and you decide, I'm going to work through this book and I'm going to take out of this book everything that's there for me to learn, then you can have some sort of direction. That's why when we have auditions that come up, when we have NISMA that comes up, which is a New York State school program where students perform on their instrument or their voice, and they are evaluated throughout the school years. I think it's from 5th grade to 11th grade. When you have something like that that you're working on, or if you have songs that the student is performing in band, you have guidelines, you have a direction. You have, like, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why having a teacher is so important, because that also gives you that sense of, this is the path we're taking, this is what we're here to accomplish. But if you're on your own and you do not have a teacher, as many of us are and have been, you need to find that direction. Books are a great source of direction. But of course, private lessons are the way to go. Even when, or especially when, you maybe have a student, a child in your home that is a drummer, and they're playing drums in school or percussion in school. Private lessons are a great leg up for your child, because you think about it, in an environment in a public school where there might be 10, 15, 20, 30 kids in a music class with one instructor. You're not going to get that individual specialized attention. And when you do go to a private instructor, you will get that one-on-one special attention. You'll be able to work on exactly the pieces that have been assigned to you in school, and you can rise above your classmates and maybe get those spots, those jobs on the piece. You want to play snare drum. You work hard, you're working with a private teacher, your chances are better. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to read something from a book that was published many moons ago. It is connected to the stick control book, which is one of the top 5 drumming books ever written. And so this is a companion piece of articles written by the author of Stick Control. And it really outlines a lot of stuff that, nothing's really changed all that much in certain aspects of drumming and teaching, right? So I'm just going to skim through this and kind of read it out to you. The oral count in practice. The average beginner in drumming doesn't take kindly to the suggestion that he count aloud while practicing. In fact, his reaction to the oral count often makes the proverbial balky mule seem cooperative in comparison. Now you can see how old this is, right? The language, the terminology. And then this is what we usually hear. I can't. It throws me off. I can do it at home, but I can't do it here in lessons. I do count, but in my head, I count to myself. I can't do 2 things at once. And then, so we try to, it's a struggle we often have, right? As a teacher, we often have this struggle with our students. There is an apprehension to counting out loud. And I don't know if it's embarrassment, if they feel silly or whatever. But, let me see. Yeah, right? So in this struggle between teacher and student, if the teacher wins, all is well. If the pupil wins and they do not count out loud on a regular basis, all is not well, for both teacher and pupil are thereby placed under a handicap, which positively will retard progress and quite possibly prevent it entirely. So what this author of one of the most popular drum books in history is saying is that counting out loud or not counting out loud will certainly slow any progress, if not eliminate progress altogether. And then he goes on to talk about, without comprehension and control of the rhythmic structure, a drummer cannot hope to maintain tempo and precisely interpret intricate rhythmic patterns. So basically what he is saying is that we need to understand the landscape of music before we can go ahead and tackle reading. Think about it this way. If you were to open a book and start reading it, and you notice that there were no capital letters, there was no punctuation, there were no indentations for paragraphs. It was just words started here, top left, bottom right, ended. No punctuation. That would be very, very difficult to read. Sometimes as a voice actor, I'll be doing an audiobook and the audition will come through and the punctuation is not there, or it's poorly written, or in the way they sent it over or saved it or whatever, it's got all of these things in it, and it's very, very hard to read. So think about opening that book with no punctuation, no capital letters, no indentation for paragraphs. If you do not count, this is what it's like to read music. Counting sets the guidelines. Counting sets the grid for you to understand all the characters on the page when you're reading music. And I've been having this experience, well, this one student I'm having this experience with, who is preparing for his instrument recital, but I've discovered holes in his reading comprehension. And this often happens when I get students that come in and they're just starting after either not studying or studying with other people. There are inevitably holes in their game, things about reading that they don't understand, fundamental things that are very important, that if you try to continue to teach this person how to read without addressing those holes, you're going to have a hard time. And so this is what's been happening with a particular student, and we've decided to take a step back. And now I am going through, we're going back a little bit in an attempt to identify those holes and then fill in that understanding and knowledge that he does not have at this point. And it's working, because this way I can evaluate exactly what he knows and what he doesn't know. It's a tough process. Because you kind of got to, like I said, go back and you got to dig through some stuff and figure it out. So we need that structure. We need that count. We need that 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to place our notes in the right places, place our rests, and give enough time between notes in order to play the piece properly and have a strong rhythmic understanding. Let me see. Drum figure, break it down. Yeah. You know, and then we have to analyze drum figures and break them down. We have to look at the notes and see what it is these notes are telling us to do. It's like solving a puzzle. It's like reading a different language. Mathematically, in its basic structure, that's how we have to break down these drum figures. And then, yeah, the way to measure structural values is to count aloud while practicing. So, for instance, the difference between a quarter note and an eighth note and a 16th note, there are significant differences there. If we don't have a steady count, we don't know what the distance from one note to the next should be, because we don't have that overall 1, 2, 3, 4 going on in the background. The oral count is the pupil's anchor, the yardstick by which he measures rhythmic patterns and comprehends them. It is the way he acquires rhythm visualization. He must visualize the patterns he is to play, otherwise he works in the dark. It is very, 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 very true. And I often do this experiment with students who are willing to count out loud. I have them play the piece without it, and then I have them play the piece while counting out loud. And they always will come back and say, yeah, that was much easier. It sounded better. It was more in time. It was more musical. So very, very important to count out loud. And here's the other thing. It's not a permanent thing. We're not counting out loud for our entire musical careers. We're counting out loud until we develop our own internal clock that we can rely on. We count out loud until we have a good understanding of counting and rhythm and timing. Once we do that, the counting can stop. Still, the counting is going to be helpful and useful when learning new things, learning new pieces of music, learning new songs to play on the drums, identifying what is going on rhythmically in a song that we're listening to. Counting along to that song is an invaluable tool that we can use to determine what's going on. Where are those bass drums hitting? Where is that fill starting? Where does that fill end? What notes are being played in that fill? All of that stuff is super important and can be figured out and determined by counting out loud. All right? So do it. If you have any reservations about counting out loud, I don't have any reservations about counting out loud. I've been doing this a long time. I've been teaching a long time. But the one reason why I love counting out loud is because it makes my life easier. When I'm learning songs, when I'm learning a piece of music to perform, whatever it is. If I go into the studio and they hand me sheet music for a song, this is what we want you to play. Okay, great, here it is. Okay, I'm going to count because I'm going to find it much easier to learn that piece of music when I'm counting. So I'm going to count because that makes my life easier. It makes my job easier, makes my life easier. It helps me to learn things so much faster. Believe me when I tell you. So counting out loud is the way to go. Let me see. We have his teacher. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just skimming through again. I'm skimming through this article that was written many years ago. Here's another advantage to the oral count, and the one the beginner couldn't be expected to know. His teacher, while giving the lesson, listens to this count, and in so doing often detects unevenness or slurring of the tongue, which is a sure sign that the pupil's conception of the rhythm being played is distorted. Right? So to boil it down, if you can't say it, you can't expect to play it. I often say this. Say it and play it. Say it and play it. Say it and play it the way you say it. Because the way we verbalize these rhythms is the way we will play these rhythms. If we verbalize the rhythms. Serves its purpose. Right. So what I was saying before, when the oral count has finally served its purpose, it may be dropped. We don't need to count aloud too much in advanced study, and we certainly do not do it at all in actual playing. Some people do. Some people do count in actual playing. I know in bands that I've worked with, we talk about writing out a song map, which will kind of give us a visual aid of how many times the intro goes, how many times the verse goes, the chorus, and you go down the line. And if you have a visual representation written out on your music stand, you may be counting as you're reading your song map, your song outline, and then you'll be playing it with the band. And then certainly as you get more comfortable with it and learn the piece of music or the song better, then you can not only do away with the song map because you know it, you can then stop counting. But ultimately, for me, counting out loud is an incredible tool, but it gives way to feeling the beat. It gives way to feeling the count. Eventually, we go from thinking to feeling in drumming. So that's all I've got to say. But yes, counting out loud certainly has its place, even when we're advanced. For me, I count out loud when I'm learning something new or something's got me, I can't think of it or understand it by listening. I count along and then I could place everything in that grid that I've created by counting out loud. And now I understand where everything is. So thanks for watching.